Today, news of a horrific act reminiscent of past conflicts and raising the new questions about U.S. involvement in Iraq. James Wright Foley, an American photojournalist, has apparently been executed by ISIS, also referred to as ISIL, or as it now calls itself, the Islamic State. A graphic video obtained by NBC News purportedly shows Foley, a freelance reporter for the U.S.-based news service Global Post, reciting threats against America before he is beheaded by an ISIS militant. Foley was kidnapped in northern Syria on Thanksgiving Day in 2012 and until now had not been heard from during his time in captivity. Foley had reported on conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, where he was actually held captive for 44 days in 2011. And now an ISIS member speaking in English has threatened the life of a second American journalist, Stephen Joel Saltoff, if President Obama does not stop airstrikes in Iraq. As for those airstrikes, they are continuing. Today, a U.S. defense official told NBC News the U.S. military has conducted 35 strikes around the Mosul Dam alone, claiming to have destroyed 90 targets. This in an effort, according to the Defense Department, to expand their area of control now that the Mosul Dam, Iraq's largest, has been recaptured from ISIS by Iraqi and Kurdish forces. And while President Obama yesterday employed the usual disclaimers about no U.S. combat forces and a limited American role in Iraq, he also sounded like a commander-in-chief who was increasingly committed to a longer battle against ISIS.
We will continue to pursue a long-term strategy to turn the tide against ISIL by supporting the new Iraqi government and working with key partners in the region and beyond. My administration has consulted closely with Congress about our strategy in Iraq, and we are going to continue to do so in the weeks to come. Because when it comes to the security of our people and our efforts against a terrorist group like ISIL, we need to be united in our resolve.
Just now, a statement from the National Security Council, quote, "We have seen a video that purports to be the murder of James Foley by ISIL. The intelligence community is working as quickly as possible to determine its authenticity. If genuine, we are appalled by the brutal murder of an innocent American journalist, and we expressed our deepest condolences to his family and friends. We will provide more information when it is available." Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California, a senior member of the Intelligence Committee and chair of the Congressional Caucus for Freedom of the Press. Congressman, this is obviously the most horrific, monstrous kind of act imaginable, and we should say that this is something that this group has been doing to hundreds of people, not just this American journalist in question.
Well, that's absolutely right, and it's hard to imagine a more apt description than evil for what this group represents. They're beheading people, they're forcing people to convert, they're victimizing women and children, starving whole population centers. They are the personification of evil, and we see this most graphically in this latest barbarous act.
So I think there's two questions to distinguish here. One is a question about is ISIL evil, and I think there's a widespread, unanimous feeling that what they're doing is just monstrous and evil. Then there's a question of, as a strategic matter, is the United States currently at war with ISIS? The airstrikes that began against ISIS began under the conditions in which we were engaged in a limited humanitarian mission to evacuate Yazidis from Mount Sinjar. That situation seems to have gotten better. Now we're talking about expanding areas of control of the Iraqi army around Mosul. So has the mission changed? Are we at war with ISIS?
Well, I think you're right, Chris. The mission has broadened. It began to protect American citizens as well as the humanitarian crisis you mentioned. It then expanded to protecting critical infrastructure, the Mosul Dam, and it's a very treacherous and slippery slope, particularly when you talk long-term strategic plan of aiding the Iraqis and helping to defeat ISIL. We may not have declared it a war, but when we're dropping bombs and they're apparently beheading our citizens, it certainly looks like war. So this is, a very precarious situation. America doesn't want to be dragged back in. At the same time, this is a group, if left to its own device, has made it clear they intend to attack us in the homeland. So, Chris, we do have a compelling strategic interest in defeating this group.
So you have been briefed, I imagine, as a member of the Intelligence Committee on ISIS. I know there was a big congressional briefing you attended. The footage they themselves put out is just unspeakably horrible, if you've ever had opportunity to look at it. How do you interpret this action today? Is this an attempt to bait America into war, or is it an attempt to warn America away from continued airstrikes?
You know, ironic, I think it may be a bit of both. This is their way of trying to deter, on the one hand, America from engaging these airstrikes, which have really set ISIL back for the first time. At the same time, part of what al-Qaeda has done, part of what ISIL wants to do, is they want to pull us in. These are kind of conflicting objectives. Maybe they see it as a win either way for them. But part of what they're trying to get is the reaction. Part of what they want is the fight against the infidels, and we are apparently the great infidel of all. So I think they have those twin objectives. Maybe most immediately they want to halt the airstrikes, but that's simply not going to happen.
So it seems to me that this is one of those situations that seems so difficult and intractable in certain ways and provides so many bad choices that many members of Congress, if not all members of Congress, are content to just sort of sit back and let the president make decisions and occasionally criticize them. Is there any conversation in Congress about its constitutional role in essentially signing off on what now looks something like a war?
There is, Chris, but you're absolutely right. The history of the last 10 years has been one of congressional abdication, particularly on these hard problems. What do we do about Guantanamo? What kind of process should we have for detainees? Whether we should revise, revisit, or repeal the existing authorizations to use force. Here, I think you're right. We have a mission that is expanding. We ought to have a real debate, dialogue about authorizing the president to do what he's doing. I think the president will do it even without an authorization under his Article 2 power. But frankly, it is more constitutionally sound and better governance to have the Congress be part of this process, and we shouldn't abdicate our responsibility.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.